So Morbius absolutely isn't a perfect superhero comic book movie, but at the same time, I don't think it's a downright awful movie either. And I really just can't wait to see when we're going to be revealing who on earth is going to be the Spider-Man in this universe. Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel Lifestyle Critic. I hope you're having a brilliant day. So in this video we are going to be talking about all of the spoiler aspects of the Morbius movie. So this is your spoiler warning, even though the director of this movie spoiled a lot of the things to do with the Morbius movie even before it was even released, which is just absolutely nuts. As you will have seen in my non-spoiler review, actually I didn't hate this movie. I mean, granted, I don't think it's the perfect superhero movie either, but I do think there is enjoyment to be had with this film, especially if you consider and view it as a bit of a small-scale vampire-based movie. Then there is enjoyment to be had in this film. And like I said in my non-spoiler review, my favourite aspect of this film by far is the absolutely brilliant, intricate and evil relationship between the Michael Morbius character and the Milo character, where they are in the beginning of this movie by truly being surrogate brothers and really having a bit of a bond and really being there for each other, and then just seeing how this relationship totally transforms into this really dark, evil, bitter, devilish relationship. I just thought was absolutely mind-blowing, and the Matt Smith character of Milo was just so brilliant. You could totally feel his heart breaking when he is just so desperate for this cure, and he knows that Michael Morbius has got a cure, but Michael Morbius doesn't want him to go down the same fate that he has gone down. Maybe there is a little bit of actually this character just wants to be the only living vampire. I wonder if that was a bit of an undercurrent. They didn't really explore it, but maybe there was a little bit of that with the Michael Morbius character. But then Milo steals one of this serum vials and then becomes a living vampire himself and is just totally brutal, unstoppable. And I just absolutely love this aspect of this character. I mean, they did explore it quite a lot in terms of this character brutally killing off that nurse and then killing off a lot of other characters as well. For example, the Martine character, even though she did return in the end of this movie as a living vampire, which we will talk about in a moment. I just thought the Milo character was so good, and the fact that he was originally so close to Michael Morbius just meant that the relationship between the protagonist and the antagonist, I think, was just really, really strong. I did also like the way in which Michael Morbius was transforming, really organically actually, into this living vampire, which they would have explored a little bit more as well, in terms of why he is just so convinced that bat DNA will allow him to help him cure his blood DNA. And I think they could have also actually, now that I come to think of it, they could have explored a lot more of the darker transformation of this character. But that being said, from a scientific point of view at least, I think it was really believable, the transformation that he does go through, and the fact that he kind of sees it as both of a blessing and a curse. I think the horror aspects of this movie were really, really brilliant, especially that chase sequence of that nurse going through this darkened hallway in the hospital where the lights are just flickering, and then just the death sequence that she has. Absolutely mind-blowing. I think it's very similar to the aesthetic shown in New Mutants, especially as that also in a bit of a psychiatric ward type feeling. And I think also, even though of course it's not as good as this movie is at all, I think you can also compare it to the infamous hospital scene with Doc Ock and his brilliant tentacles, where he is killing off all of the nurses in that sequence. I think, you know, Morbius is a little bit similar to both of those sequences as well. I do feel like this movie is ultimately really, really rushed. Like I said in my non-spoiler review, I think they could have fleshed it out so much more, and I think it would have made this movie so much better. Like I just said before, the best bit for me was the Milo versus Michael Morbius relationship and the fighting that these two characters go through. They could have just done so much more with it, especially the final battle sequence. Of course, Milo is brutally killing off so many characters. For example, their surrogate father, Michael Morbius' girlfriend, loads of civilians as well. So he definitely does do a lot of craziness, but I just feel like they could have really pushed it and made it even more chaotic, and the Milo character could have absolutely totally destroyed Michael Morbius as well, especially as in some respects he was framing him for killing off a lot of characters that actually Milo was killing off. So I feel like they could have done a little bit more with the game playing, and the fact that, you know, Michael Morbius is just questioning what on earth has he done and what on earth has he unveiled with experimenting with all of this blood stuff. I feel like they could have really explored the moral aspects of this character so much more, and the moral implications in this movie so much more as well. Given the fact that Milo was such an epic character in this movie, I feel like they could have done a little bit more as well with his final ending sequence. I know that they had a bit of a nice ending in terms of Michael Morbius actually calling Milo by his real name, although that was quite sweet, but I thought they could have done a little bit more as well from the ending point of view with the Milo character. Another thing that we do see from an ending perspective is that actually Martine is now transformed into a living vampire herself. They didn't explain exactly why and how she is being turned into this. My guess is that she was bitten by 2 living vampires, so now in the second Morbius movie or in the next Sinister Six movie, now that there are 2 living vampires out there, maybe this will lead to a lot of living vampires being created from these 2 people. So actually Blade is going to really have his work cut out for him when he is going to be coming face to face with other living vampires. So all of those aspects of this movie, there were a little bit of misses and a few hits as well. However, when it comes to the post-credit scene, this is where it really does fall apart. Unfortunately, as the Adrian Toomes character, firstly, why on earth and how on earth is he suddenly being transported into this other new cinematic universe? It doesn't really follow the logic that Doctor Strange was stating in No Way Home in terms of people are brought into the MCU that know the real identity of the Spider-Man and Peter Parker character. So now characters from the MCU are suddenly going into other places. I mean, obviously we know it's because of the fact that Sony just wants the rights to these characters, but they don't really explain it in as strong a way as they could do. That being said, I am confident that they will explain this in the future, definitely when Kevin Feige is going to get his hands on some of these Sony characters. Speaking of Adrian Toomes, I did like the fact that actually they did change the Vulture costume a little bit, but also, how on earth did he even create it? I mean, the Tinkerer was doing it in the MCU with all of the found machinery from the Battle of New York with the Avengers fighting the Shikari, but obviously that's not happening in the Venom and Morbius world, so how on earth did he even create this? I feel like they really do need to explain that as well. And why on earth is Michael Morbius suddenly wanting to team up with the Adrian Toomes Vulture character against Spider-Man? He doesn't even know who Spider-Man is and suddenly is going to be happy to be part of this Sinister Six team. I feel like they just really rushed all of the post-credit scenes, and actually they didn't match any of the footage that we had seen in the trailers. These were definitely added reshooted scenes that they did after No Way Home. I just feel like if they had thought about it a little bit more, they could have made it so much stronger. And I think what could have really saved this movie is if we had seen Andrew Garfield being the true Spider-Man in this particular universe. I do actually think they did leave a lot of clues in this movie that actually it is hinting towards Andrew Garfield's character being the Spider-Man and Peter Parker of this universe. For example, Jared Leto's character is jumping up a skyscraper that looks really, really similar to the one that Peter Parker chills out in. And I think another clue is just the darker aesthetic of this world is just really, really reminiscent to the darker aesthetic that we see in the Oscorp world and the wider Mark Webb Amazing Spider-Man universe. So I am really, really hopeful that we do see eventually that Andrew Garfield is going to be the Amazing Spider-Man in this particular universe. I think that is going to absolutely save all of these Sony Spider-Man universe of characters. It's definitely not going to be Tom Holland, as obviously he is in the MCU at the moment. Maybe they're going to bring him over in the exact same way that they did with the Adrian Toomes character. I definitely don't think it's going to be Tobey Maguire, as he's already had his own version of the Venom Eddie Brock character. So I am really, really hopeful that it is going to be Andrew Garfield. I guess the other option is that maybe it is going to be Miles Morales that is going to be the Spider-Man in this world. I think the trailer's absolutely hilarious, as they did allow themselves to kind of pick any of the Spider-Mans that they wanted, as obviously the Daily Bugle looks really similar to Tobey Maguire's world. Obviously the Oscorp Tower is very similar to the one that we see in Andrew Garfield's world. And of course Adrian Toomes, played by Michael Keaton, is from Tom Holland's world. So they did leave it open-ended for themselves, but I am really intrigued to see what on earth is going to happen next for the Michael Morbius character and the wider Sony universe of characters. But as far as Morbius is concerned, like I did say in the beginning, this movie is definitely not perfect, but I don't think it's absolutely downright awful either. I would love now to hear from you. What did you think of this movie? Please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.